Here we go, and we're off. It's day 3 of Whale Whisperers, and amazingly, we are crossing the planet with every session. We've finally made it as far as New Zealand. Welcome, Paul Keating from EKo Tours. How are you doing?
Kia ora, Dylan. Welcome back to you from New Zealand.
Thanks, Paul. And Paul, I've got to start off with a big thank you because I know I'm not an early starter person personally, and I know it's very early in the morning there, so I really appreciate you getting up for us today.
No, that's fine. We usually in New Zealand, most people get up pretty early in the country.
Excellent. Are you gonna show us your really strong coffee?
It's actually water. That's my daughter up in Portofino in Italy.
Oh, sweet, very nice. You're a purist drinking water this early in the morning. Very impressive.
Oh, yes.
So Paul, you've been with the WCA for a few years now, and you are regional coordinator for Oceania, and you do a huge amount of work for the organisation. I want to start with a big thanks for that, and you've also really been kind of championing the importance of developing online or face-to-face guides training courses, really.
Yes, really, I think one of the most important things for changing hearts and minds is the people that connect with our audience or our guests when we're out observing dolphins and whales. Most people come with notions in their head of what they've seen on YouTube.
Yeah.
Which is, we have had over the last 60 years probably a bad message put through televisions by people with captive animals, so people think it's quite normal to touch dolphins, which is completely not correct. And I think dolphins just jump up in the air and spin around for no reason, and that's what they do because that's what dolphins do. But as we all know, that's not the case. Dolphins do like humans, but it takes a little bit of effort to gain their trust and a lot of time, and in some regions they don't trust humans anymore. But trying to get these messages across about how to be responsible and act correctly around the animals has to really come from our guides. So our guides are the ones that are directly in contact. It's not so much the administrators or whatever we write on paper, because I think the figures are, well, it varies from 16 to 20 million people a year go dolphin and whale watching or viewing or swimming, mostly probably whale based. There's lots of land based interaction there as well, and that's becoming more and more prevalent around the coast as some of our humpback whales come back. But all of these people that interact, if our guides are giving that message of being responsible and how to act accordingly around them, I think when I originally wrote about this is that 10% of the people that go away will remember that message, and if it's a positive message, then they'll tell another 10 people, so we can affect millions and millions of people every year by ensuring our guides are correctly trained and they're giving across the responsible message to the customers. So that was the main motivator behind it, is that if we have fantastic guides and they give across the great message, we do affect change more than at a legislative level, much more, because change, the proper change, comes from changing hearts and minds, and that's easiest, or not easiest, but it's still difficult. But if we don't start putting those quality into the training, into our guides, and putting the time and effort into our guides, we'll never succeed in what we want to do.
Absolutely. I love that. The thing that you mentioned there about hearts and minds, and we know it's a combination of those two things if we're to enact change. That's a really nice way to start. I mean, the title of today's webinar is about one aspect of the training course that you've developed, and we want to talk about how if somebody wants to become a professional naturalist guide or a whale watching guide, how they actually sort of develop the knowledge and how they become knowledgeable. I want to come on to that, but before we kind of delve into the details, it would be great to get a little bit of background. How do you find yourself, Paul, running a whale and dolphin watching tourism business in New Zealand? How did you get to this point?
This is a long story.
You'll have to cut it short. We've only got an hour.
Okay, so I when I was about 8 years old, I grew up in an area where we had 2 rivers, and we didn't have a lot of money. I was quite poor as a family, so my playground was a river. So I was thrown in the river at a young age, and off you go, have fun. And I started looking underwater. I bought a mask. So I used to do a paper round, and I bought a mask, and this is the time of Jacques Cousteau. So I started reading books, and the first book I read regarding the underwater world was The Undersea World by Jacques Cousteau. So my father was very literate and used to go to the library, and I couldn't afford to buy the book. We borrowed it from the library, and I read through Jacques Cousteau's book and the silver suits, and and Jacques Cousteau was amazing. So I started to be more interested in the underwater world, and I bought a big set of flippers, which are the first ones you could buy from Jacques Cousteau. They were produced by Aqualung. He actually helped start Aqualung, and the flippers were huge, big plastic rubber flippers, nearly as half the size of my body. And so there was this strange kid living up in the mountains with 2 rivers swimming around underwater. So I started to become very good at breath holding underwater. So I then progressed in New Zealand, becoming a professional power diver, and realised that I was really quite good in the water by the age of about 16. I then moved down to the South Island where I live now, and I started professional power diving, swimming around the coastline. You have to swim the entire coast to get very fit. And you learn a lot about coastal, near coastal, what lives in the near coastal zone, because you're working in that place. I then started to look at qualifications, and my qualifications extended out into the open ocean. I started then to work out towards Antarctica up to my 20s. Did a lot of time what you call deep sea working, where you learn about the main ocean. You're out there for 60 days at a time. You don't see land. And my first year at sea, working on the bigger boats, I did 320 days at sea, 40 days on land. So you accumulate sea time and experience very quickly. I then moved back coastal and ran a few of my own boats, and started at the age of 20 teaching diving, because I was drawn back to what I was actually naturally good at. I then ran diving organisations, teaching PADI, moved through to SDI, TDI. And then from there, I wanted to run my own operation. So I had aspirations of having the biggest liveaboard dive vessel in the world. So I targeted American companies, and I worked for 2 companies. One had 13 vessels and one had 7. They were the biggest companies at the time. And I became the fleet captain by the age of 28.
Wow.
For the largest diving operation in the world. And I rang my father at the age of 28 and said, Dad, are you proud of me, And he says, yes, of course I'm proud of your son. So basically I realised at 28 I was doing most things just to please my father, as we do as young men.
Yeah.
So sort of the bubble burst, and I thought, all right, I'm going to go back to pursuing what I wanted to do. So I've always wanted to run my own operation. I had aspirations of being back here. When I first came into this area, I was 16 years old when I first left home to come down South Island to be a diver. And I sailed into this area in the Marlborough Sounds here, and I looked around and I thought, well, this is where I want to be later on in life. This is where I want to live. So I was very lucky, because most people don't have those moments in their life where I think this is what I want to do, and then are able to work towards them. But to come back to this area, I needed to have a plan and money, I suppose. So I moved into doing super yachting. So I went to super yachting. First, I helped run super yachts with diving based all around the world. So we traveled around the globe, all the nicest diving spots, so I had experience with that. And then I did a lot of work up in the Mediterranean. I built some ships up there, and I started teaching people on board the boats, because I was getting to the age into my 30s. I was already much more experienced than most of the yacht captains. I'm a qualified engineer, so I qualified in England as a merchant engineer and in New Zealand, and I'm also a merchant captain in New Zealand and a merchant captain in England, which is very rare. So I continued that education. I did quite a bit of work with scientific-based operations as well for a little while. Dr. Sylvia Earle, I got to work with her,
Great.
which was amazing.
Yeah. She
stopped me eating fish for quite a little while.
Did she?
She's an incredible woman. She's incredible. She's so inspiring. She asked me to come and work for her at the time, but I think Dr. Phil Newton was working for her then. He was inventing the Newt suit.
Right.
And he's quite amazing, so I didn't want to. He was very influential, and I didn't really want to try and work my way past him. It's very impossible. So I'm very ambitious. So anyway, I stayed in Europe, met my wife in Micronesia a few years before that, and we got married, and then I had a daughter. And then at the ripe old age of 40, I decided to give everything up and come back to my original plan of being down in New Zealand and running a wildlife or water-based enterprise around animals, which is my true passion. So I saw a business for sale, which was two American scientists owned it, and it was a dolphin watching business based here. I knew it.
Really?
So it had been operating already for 16 years.
Wow.
So it was an established business. So I brought that with a partner, and then I came back down here working 6 months a year, and continued to work for about 5 years up through Europe, 6 months building super yachts or looking after them for rich people. And then a few years ago, I discovered WCA, which aligned very similar to my aspirations. I base a business around ethics, around an ethics-based operation. The business name means Ethical Conservation Organisation. So we don't look at money as the big driver. It's more based on things we do that are beneficial. So the other side of the business, we take people to sanctuary islands, and we have to know about all the animals on land. So my guides have to know all about the flora and fauna on land and in the sea. So we have a huge amount of subjects. So I've been training for a long time, and I have to train my guides to not only know about dolphins or whales. On each trip, we might see 15 species, and I have to know something about each of those 15 species in the presentation, because with trips of 4 hours, you have to be able to 3-4 minutes. We cover about 60 kilometers in the trip. So you're moving, stopping, talking, moving, stopping, talking, moving, stopping, talking. Underneath that is all conservation message. Fantastic. So we talk about the ecosystem, how here where we live, we have sunken river valleys. So the land directly affects the ocean. So we have to talk about the trees, how their sedimentation directly goes in and affects the food source. This directly affects our small hectors dolphins here, which are one of our key species, and how the other species relate to the ecosystem. So our talk isn't about a marine mammal, it's how that marine mammal fits into an entire system. So we have to teach people that, and it generally takes them, I say, to be competent in it, quite a little while. We can get them up to a stage where we can take them out and they can earn money in about 30 days. Realistically, they can do a 5 to 7 day course. I've just put 2 more local people through the online course, which is fantastic. We're getting really good feedback, and they turn up to the job very good grounding, and then they see the grounding in practice. It takes the practice and seeing the timing of it all, and then in New Zealand with employment contracts, you get about 30 days. So by 30 days, most people, we then continue the education. Always education has to continue. So we have a very structured system, is that it takes about 12 tours. We have it in a 12 tour process. The first 3 tours, you concentrate on this. The next 3, you concentrate on that. So you break it up into modular format, very, very slowly, so that people can slowly progress through. Structure is incredibly important with teaching. If you do not have structure, doesn't matter how much you talk. If it's too much, as most of the case, it doesn't sink in. It has to be in little wee bites that that the students or anyone. My latest student was 45. I've just got another one coming through at the moment. She's 22, so a very different age range.
Right.
We'll teach up to, one of the ladies working for me now completed the course. She's 52 and ex-teacher, and I see the different way, the different styles. Teaching helps, but we've got another lady who, she's 22. She was a solo mother, had 3 children before she was 22. She's now just entering the workforce. So she went from school, had her children, now just entering the workforce. And the different styles still work in the system. Yeah. So the system still works, but you have to have a very slow, concise progress system, small bits of encouragement, and then break it all down into little wee pieces. And at the end, you end up with a fantastic guide that not only believes in themselves, but believes in the message that you're giving across, which is, a world where whales are free in the wild.
Fantastic.
So yeah, my journey's been a long one.
It has been, but it's a fascinating one. And I think one of the things that's interesting about your story is that the teaching element sort of crops up again and again, hasn't it, through your career? Desire to teach and desire to educate. And I think that sort of really shines through. And also I think it's, and I'm sure that you would agree with this, but I think it's really nice to just contemplate a little bit that training to be a wildlife guide or a marine wildlife guide or a whale watching guide, it sounds very niche, and in a way it is, but obviously there are wonderful careers out there working on boats, sea or other or land-based wildlife opportunities with tourism. But there are also so many other amazing jobs for which being a guide during part of your career is so important. I mean, it teaches you, so much about communication skills and dealing with, challenges that are unexpected, and there's so much that you get from that experience, isn't there?
There is. We used to train a lot of scientific-based people that have been to university. So same as in the yachting industry, I'd have people that would go and spend a lot of money on university qualifications and not really know what they wanted to do. I've had a lot of trained marine biologists, because a lot of them don't find work. There's, the system produces a lot of marine biologists, which is pointless. It's like a BA, general business degree. So a lot of them come through and they're a bit deflated because they haven't been able to apply their knowledge. So it's quite nice for some of them, but for marine biologists, the ones that are focused on scientific work, it doesn't work for them. Because they want to be based in a laboratory and doing science and producing papers. That's probably 50% of the marine biologists. But there's another 50% that actually do want to educate, and those ones it works really, really well for. But the other end of the spectrum is a young girl like the one I've got now, and she worked cleaning in hotels, and she's good with people, and she worked in cafes. She loves animals, loves dolphins, never been formally educated. But that person that has the interpersonal skills, that can actually relate to people, can talk to them and listen and have empathy for what they're listening to. It's funny, but when you see the end product at the end, the people that have those interpersonal skills are very good, because you are in front of people. You can learn to present. We teach people how to use a mic. You put a mic on your chin, you hold it there so your voice doesn't go up and down. It's funny, because you have to use a mic to present. And at first, some people are very scared of using a mic to talk. But in time, you do get used to those things. We can teach their techniques. We have techniques on pronunciation. And one of my recent, very fantastic guides was Josephine Warnett. And she's French. She was ex-French Air Force, had the skills which she used to serve the president in the Air Force. She was one of the flight attendants at a high level. But the French language to come through, so we went into teaching the French vowels, and before each word, if you are in a different language, you have to use English vowels, which are different. And you can simply say the vowels, and slowly it'll change. But the WCA, we're not here to teach English. We're here to make people passionate and learn about how to be responsible for whales. So part of the course there, when we put text below, because sometimes Josephine, who's on the training videos, we can't quite understand her language, but to me that is normal now. The world has many different languages, many different people. The WCA is made up of multiple different languages. We all have a common goal. So we don't have to pronounce everything perfectly, but we do have to get that message across. And that requires presentation skills. It requires talking. It requires stopping. It requires you when to know when to be quiet. Sometimes you can talk too much.
Yeah.
You've got to know, and we teach all this, like when you see that, what is the animal doing? The classic one is we say, wait till you can see something. When you see it, the people will be looking at the animal. What is the animal doing? Once you get your knowledge base up, oh look, there's a dusky dolphin and it's moving quickly through the water. It's porpoising, it's chasing fish. And because the people are in their brain, they're looking at the animal, but they don't know what it's doing. So you're meant to be their little voice in their head, going, this is what the animal's doing. That makes a perfect guide. I've heard that comment quite a bit. I'm very old now, so when I go on the boat, I watch the people's eyes. Whatever they're looking at, I talk about. And some of them say they've come back and they video the animals, and then my commentary in the back is like, yeah, this is what the animal's doing. It's like the animal's speaking sometimes. So, I've had them come back and say, well, it's like the animal was talking about what he was doing. I was like, yeah, because that's, as the animal moves, you adjust your commentary, but that takes time. But then it's, when we watch wildlife programs and we see David Attenborough and the animal does this and it explains it, that's what you're aiming for. But they don't talk fast, and if you realise it's not a lot of content, but it's content that has a leading point to it, and then you drop in the conservation messages. Most conservation messages and actions are generally towards the end. You've got to think of fun, what's to get people in, what are the interesting facts. You drop in facts about the animals, interesting things, how they interact with people. Humans love that. The little stories, and then at the end, the classic one is, do you love these animals now? Well, you guys can help them. You can help them by doing this. You can see our actions around the animals. We've slowed down. We kept the animals on the front of the boat. When you're on your own boat or you're with friends, make sure they slow down. I always make a joke. I say, once you educate the ladies, then it's all under control, because they'll tell the man what to do. It's like you're in a car. The guy may be driving the boat, but he's not really controlling the boat. There's one where we have speeding. Speeding boats is a big problem around the world for animal strike. So in New Zealand, we have a rule within 200 metres ashore. You have to slow down to 5 knots, but most people do not follow that rule. So it's one we're trying to push around here.
And New Zealand is quite a special country in that there are so many so many people in the population are boat users, aren't there?
Yes, so it's like in America with the gun law. We've got the fishing rod law here. So it's every man's right to go out and catch a fish, although we should have more regulation for fishing here. So we think the bag limits are too high. Literally, we get taught when we're young, you buy a freezer and you go out and you catch wild game, because a lot of our species are introduced. So we actually look at it the way of conservation. If you want to be a conservationist here, you have to kill possums, kill deer, kill bear. And a lot of people, they come in, I want to be a conservationist. Well, you're going to kill these animals. It doesn't sit very well. But we then eat because it's expensive to live here. The food's expensive in New Zealand. We subsidise by taking game out of the bush and the surrounding area and eating it. But same in the ocean, as we manage it reasonably well, but the coastal space within the 100 metres needs more protection. We're good at protecting land in New Zealand, but we're not good at protecting water. Australia is better. Australians listening, they're doing a much better job protecting marine areas. They see that you protect an area and it helps for people who do want to fish later on.
I say it's not common to hear a Kiwi congratulating the Australians. Thank you for doing that.
No, it's not common.
So let's talk a bit more in detail about learning the information, learning the content, and really learning about wildlife, because you know, you and I know that that's a job that never ends, and which is part of the pleasure of it. And you know, it's quite daunting. Thinking back to when I was young, probably when I first, you know, that first trip that I worked as a wildlife tour guide. I think I was pretty daunted. You know, I had some knowledge, but you're thinking, right, you know, if I get called out here and the first three questions, the questions I can't answer, you know, their confidence in the customer in me is gone straight away. So what are the sort of things that helped you to learn when you were, you know, when you were growing up, and when you've gone through your career? And what are the tips that you give on the training course for how to gather that knowledge, really?
So there's a couple of things there. For the first one that you did mention about if you don't know, say you don't know and you'll find the answer. That's
good point.
Don't try and just go, look, sorry, I don't know that, but I'll find the answer and come back to you. That's one of the first things we teach them.
Never make it up, do you? Never make it up, because there's always someone in the audience who knows more than you think they do.
The classic one was that when we went out on the whale watching tour in Hervey Bay, and we had all the experts on board, and the guides that were on board the boats, one of them on one of the boats just froze because they had the world experts on board, and the guide on our boat, I actually sat next to her because I know her good friend, so she was really nervous sitting next to me. I said, look, just talk. So she actually did a really good job, because you do get nervous with experts around. And don't stick on like percentages and facts. Talk generally. But to gain knowledge, it does start off in different ways. That's what we're finding now. So I was reading based. My father was very literate. Our family are very literate. So we could go to the library. I got encouraged as a young child to go to the library, and I saw my dad reading books, so I just copied my father and read books. But there's only so much in books. Really, observation of the animals, and then it's different in each location. You can learn base things. You can learn about species and kingdom and xylem and phylum, you know, all the different technical terms, but a lot of the time you've got to look at the individual animal and try and concentrate on, we say with the guides, 3 facts. What we expect when they go out there. So like today in the training process, we've got 10 animals to talk about. Pick the ones you want to talk about. Know 3 facts of each animal, and they'll be on the mic talking. And when there's always 2 people on the boat, so there's an experienced person and inexperienced, and the same as on any ship. So when you're talking, once you're finished with what you know, just point to the other person, and we'll come in. And how I do it this is how I teach once they finish. So then I'll say 2 or 3 more facts and listen to what I'm saying. So then the next day you can broaden your fact sheet, and that's how we do it. But to get to that point,
that's how you kind of build their confidence. So they've got some information, so they know that they can't, you know, really make a mistake, and then they're learning from a mentor, really.
Yeah, from a mentor. Mentor based, not putting people in the spotlight and stepping away from them, which is very important. You've got, and we always, with the junior guides, we always tell people straight away, okay, we've got a trainee guide here, so all of the difficult questions go straight to that person, you know, just for a laugh. And it breaks the ice. It breaks the ice. And then, of course, everyone's had to learn. So people go up and go, oh, great, it's great. How long have you been doing this? The person's really enthusiastic. It's, oh, look, I really love it. And, and their enthusiasm comes out.
Yeah.
And the person is there because they're enthusiastic. They're not forced into doing a job like this. You know, they're just enthusiastic. So they come in there and the enthusiasm comes out, and then they start on the subject. And the more they relax and realize that nothing's going to happen to them if they say anything wrong, or, you know, or make a mistake, then they learn better. So yeah, it's really important to have someone else there on the job. Read a little bit, so the person will come back in from, say, the first tour, and they'll go, oh, how did I do? And we give feedback. We go, look, great, you did good here, but I want you to go home, and this particular animal, I want you to study up on, and you can use, we have a library here. So we have a library, which is just a series of books and different books and pamphlets and stuff that we've collected. Go into the library or go to look at these online sources. We use certain online sources that are credible. And we use certain ones for certain species or animals with different types. And then so come back the next day, and when you talk about this other species on board today, you'll add a few more facts. And do you remember what I said? So it's just a process. They have a training record book, so hence I've developed for the World Cetacean Alliance one thing that's really important for training, which is a training record book. So through my career as a professional sailor, I studied under the New Zealand and the British commercial system. And when you have a training record book, during the day you'll go out to sea, and whenever you're at sea, you're learning. So in the same thing, you come back from your guiding trip, you go into your training record book and you go, okay, I learned this today. Can you please sign that off? And you move forward in a progressive path. And that also includes the species. So once you have that in your head, that it's a progressive path and the knowledge slowly builds up, then you'll get to where you need to go. So keeping record of your training, talking to the people you're with about sources of information, which will be different in different locations. You may be in a location in Africa where you don't have a lot. So they might say, go and talk to Charlie, old Charlie over there. Go and make him a cup of tea and he'll tell you. You know, I had that, and I worked in Central America, and I had to go talk to Gino, was his name. And Gino was the expert, and it was fantastic because it's oral learning. You know, you're talking with someone, and often the older people, you have to make them a cup of tea, and because they don't have to give you the knowledge. But if you're nice to them, they will.
Yeah.
So different locations. Part of with the process of what we're developing now with WCA is also one of the things we have is the specialties. So within the course structure, you start off as a professional and you learn 5 specialties. So these specialties will be the whales and the dolphins. We've also included seals in there, and we've also put a seabird one for this area, because when you're on your tour, if you know about seabirds, you can talk about other things apart from the mammals, which is fantastic. Then at the next level, you move up to the next level and you have to do 10 specialties. So you have to know 10 items. Then when you get up to the next level, you have to do 15 specialties. So each of these specialties can be developed by each location. I don't have bride's whales here. I don't have, well, we've got lots of whales in New Zealand, but I don't have the same species as they do in the Azores, as they do in Portugal, Iceland. I have blue whales, but we don't look at them. Grey whales, all of those specialties. So we can develop a specialty pretty quickly, and that can go in. So the overview of the guide is the same guiding process training, and then you bring in the specialties, so that guide can train for each location. So that's the idea, is the development. You get your specialties, you go to a location, you do your period of time. A lot of guides like to travel, and then they'll move to another location, and when you go to the other location, you study the other specialties. So this process, if you're looking at a professional, what's called a naturalist, I've worked with professional naturalists, and a lot of them work on the high-end cruise ships. They work about 6 months a year, and that's exactly how they operate. So they go from location to location. They do a study period, study on the animals, spend 2 or 3 months there. They'll have a few months off, then they move to another location around the world. With guiding as a profession, it's an amazing job, but it does require, often people are quite itinerant. They will move from like an endless summer. I had 10 years of summer, so you keep moving. And with the feeding and migration periods around the world of the animals, it's really amazing to do that. Classic example is the sardine run in South Africa. So if you're going over there to be involved in that, that's for a certain period of time, and then you'll move to where where the blue whales are coming past Sri Lanka. Go and work on those, then you'll head up to Iceland for that period, then you'll come down for the migration of the whales coming past Australia, so you can move quite a long way around. So you want to think, you need to be in a system that the system is flexible enough to account for those global partners in the WCA. So then we can train the quality, we put in the quality assurance, and we know those guides moving to all our partners, they have presentation. They know how to learn, and then we just have to encourage the partners to produce the specialties, for the partners to put the knowledge, those specialty knowledge bases, into a place that the WCA can access them, hence online. Now after COVID, everyone's used to learning online, so it's sort of been an advantage. And then our guides can keep their education going, and the system is designed to get up to course director level. So you have a career path, your education starts at the bottom, and you can move right up to 35, 40-year-old. If you want to be based in a location and have children, you can be a course director. You can help to run a facility, or you can facilitate training online. That's the aim of it, that I created a career path. There was no career path for a guide. And I worked with a lot of them that were frustrated by the time they got to 30, 25 or 30, and then they had to leave the industry and go to a completely different working industry to obtain enough money to start a family. We all, like animals, we all have basic instincts, and when you get to a certain age, you want to do certain things. So by creating a career path, hopefully that's been taken into account, and we can keep those passionate people within the WCA.
Yeah,
in a learning structure. Sorry, I went a little bit off track there.
You did a little bit, but but I think it's great what you've set up there, and we want to be able to keep people that have learned these amazing skills within the WCA partnership. We want to be able to keep them protecting the world's cetaceans and our oceans. We need more people to do that much is definitely clear. Just going back to the learning element, though, I think one of the things that is obviously very important, you touched on this at the beginning, is identifying things. It's maybe the first thing that you're going to be asked all the time, really. What's that bird? Is that a whale? What kind of whale is it? What kind of dolphin? And books can only take you so far with those skills, can't they? You need field experience and mentors and help with those kind of things. What's your advice for that?
There's several ways to do it. Is that one of the useful tools when we look at cetaceans or animals is binoculars. So instead of just your eyes, is developing a skill set using binoculars. So we often will give, and we've done a binocular training module, the first in the world actually, which is free. So because you have to know what you're doing. It's a whole lot of characteristics to do with binoculars and how human eyes works, and you've got to know how you can strain your eyes. But anyway, go look at the binocular module. It's free. And
cool.
Once you get those, if you're land-based, you can develop your skills on land. So you don't have to be going out to sea. You can be developing your skills. I can look out the window and start working with birds or different animals. So then when I get out on the water, my skills are sharp. Binoculars allow you to look a long, long way ahead, and then you can see the animals coming, and you can learn to recognize behavior and characteristics before they get there. So you need to know about fin ID for all the different cetaceans, and that comes off charts or diagrams. Generally in your location, you'll only have certain types of marine mammals. You may get, or most common, you do get some areas where different marine mammals will come in at certain times, but if you're not too experienced, you can ask a more experienced person on the boat if you do get something strange that turns up. Learning about fin ID is a really good thing to do. That's a scientific way of identifying animals. That's also in our modules. Seeing different pictures of animals go through. Internet's actually quite fine for that, for typing in different species. You can just go there and look at the different species and look at their characteristics. You can write them down to increase your knowledge base. But I would say, if you're looking at it from a professional point of view, is don't try and learn too many species you're not dealing with if you've got to present. If you've got to present, or your aim is to work in a specific area, then learn about the species that are there. So your brain will fill up very quickly, because there's a lot of knowledge. Is think, this is a species in my area. How am I going to find them? Where do they live? What do they normally do? What are their characteristics? What do they display when they're traveling, when they're socializing, when they're feeding? So there's main normal scientific terms to describe an animal's characteristics or what it's doing at the time. So learn those about the local species. And we set up in the training record book the ability as well, once someone does the course, they can print the book, download it and print it yourself, or we can send you a copy. So you can take the book with you. You can go out on a personal boat. You don't have to be on a commercial operation. You can have your own boat like we do here, and you can put in the details in the logbook. If you're going out on a commercial boat, paying people to go on a trip, like often in America, you can then say to the crew, like, look, I'm in a training process. Can I help the crew I've got my binoculars, or can I borrow some, or best to have your own, you know. I've got my binoculars, I'm familiar with them. Can I help you guys spot the animals and help find animals for the people on board? And then can you sign this off in my training record book as experience? So we've set up that facility that you can gain experience, even if you're not working for a WCA partner or an organisation. You can still record that experience, because it's very important when you do go to apply for a position, if you're thinking professionally to do as a career. If someone shows me that they've written down their experience, I don't care if it's working for a company, if they're actually out there putting in the effort and they're logging what they're doing, that's fantastic. That shows the type of person that I would employ, because they're taking it as a serious occupation. They're actually putting time and effort into it. So yeah, that's ways to continue education, and you learn to identify. It doesn't have to be in a boat. It can be out the window of your house. So
and that logbook.
Yeah, and using a logbook. But the more time every day, binoculars every day, if you pick them up a couple of times, it only takes a few minutes a day, and you learn to adjust your eyes. And when I have people on the water, it takes about a year to get good. But you can actually, I have a pair of binoculars in my kitchen, and I pick them up. I still now, after 30 years, I'll pick them up and look through them and let my eyes adjust and do that. There's certain things you have to do. Yeah, they're a very, very useful tool.
They are essential, really. They are essential, definitely. And they often, even if animals are quite close, it allows you to pick out detail that other people are missing, and then you can convey that messaging, really. And I really like the idea that you were talking about with the logbook and people being able to take that on other experiences and getting someone to sign that experience. Yeah. But it reminds me also of the notebook. You know, there's the logbook, but there's also the notebook. And
it used to be.
Yeah, you know, actually,
I work with birders.
Yeah, well, exactly. But I think, you know, actually birders do this a lot, but a lot of naturalists, it might seem old-fashioned, but it's a way of recording information, and drawing is very important, not just writing things down, because it helps to commit to memory.
It does,
writings that you have, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's spot on, Dylan. Yeah, actually, we had Sir Joseph Banks here in the area I'm in Queen Charlotte Sound. So he was the first naturalist that started off a series of work where in the world in the 1700s, there wasn't a system that actually talked about the genus, the kingdom, you know, laid down all the structure for basic science. So he started that work here at the end of the Sound in Queen Charlotte Sound in 1771. And when he got back to England, he gave that work, because he wasn't allowed on the second voyage, he gave the work to Charles Darwin, and that is the basis of what we use today for all plants and animals. And when you look at his original notes, that's what it was, just little hand drawings and a few notes and saying, oh, this one relates to this, and this is like all plants and animals. So it's pretty simple when you do it. And when the process of memory and writing is really good. We're very digitally based now. And that's fantastic. Having a mobile phone is amazing. You know, the cameras on them are incredible. But you've got to work out your own method. How do you put information into your head? Generally, I found in the training now, I used to train with static PDF training, or people through a static image. But we're so used to moving image now, is that I find with the moving content of the videos we did and the information going in a presentation way that way, is the uptake. I gauge the uptake. We've done around 40 courses of level 2, the WCA, so the World Station Alliance level 2 course. So the feedback we're getting from that, and I look at the amount of retention in the students, and the retention level through using video now is really good for people, which is really encouraging, because COVID has forced us all to actually more psychologically embrace communication without being here. You know, we actually, our brains are more relaxed with it, and it's normal. So that's spilled across the education. So COVID was probably an opportunity. I spoke to you guys about 2 years ago about helping with the education area of the WCA, because it's one of my passions, and COVID has actually pushed that forward. So I was already in plans to do it, but it's just made me in the last, especially in the COVID period, we got some government subsidies, so we were sitting at home and, that's really, we had a lot of time, and myself and Miranda and Josephine. So we're like, right, we'll get this done now. Let's get on and do it, So,
that's fantastic.
So some out of the big black cloud that's been hanging over us, it's actually produced some good. And I think, with education, it evolves. We have feedback in the system. So any feedback that comes from the students, particularly, also from course directors or from other countries, we can adjust the system and keep adjusting it. And that's the trick is keep adjusting the system. If we say, okay, the training record book, we need to make this so people can do little drawings. There's not enough space for drawings of the species, which is a really good point. So we can put in templates there. I can put in templates for people with learning. So when we do a 3-minute talk about an animal, we generally have a structure. So we have the different things you talk about, and I can put in templates for that so people can see an animal and write down the things they need to talk about, do a basic drawing, and that may help with the presentation process. So good point.
That'd be a nice element to it for sure. Now we've got just under 15 minutes left of this webinar, so I want to invite any questions from our audience. Please do type your questions out in the Q&A or in the chat, and I will try and ask Paul any of those questions. I didn't
know you had people here. I didn't know. Oh, there's 26 people.
It's not just me and you. We're also going to record. This is also being recorded, so hopefully people can watch it at leisure as well, especially in New Zealand where it's still early in the morning. But I wanted to, while any questions come in, I wanted to sort of give a bit of a shout out to the customers or the clients or the passengers of whale watching boats themselves, because for me, I actually learned so much from them. And I have been on whale watching trips, particularly where you've got large vessels and the guide tends to be up on the bridge a lot, where they can use the microphone, and they're not engaging with the customers at all. They're not making that a priority, and they're missing out on all of this knowledge. And I'm not just talking about cetacean knowledge here. People who know about weather or know about other aspects of wildlife or the cultural heritage of the place, all of that. There's gold dust there. And I must admit, I think I spent half of my time as a guide probably repeating the information that I've learned from customers. And I wonder whether that's sort of something that you would echo, really.
Yes, definitely. One thing we do find is often people might be in your area because they have family ties to the area. Our history only goes back here a couple of 100 years, but we do get a lot of people that turn up. So, my granddad used to be here, my relations were here. So it's often really good to get the stories. And we have, with the guides, our tours are about 4 hours. At the end of the process, we're traveling back to the port, and it's about usually around a 20-kilometre journey. So we've got about 45 minutes. We often give people in our afternoon tours a nice glass of wine. They sit down and start yakking or comparing notes. And then we say to the guide, spend 2 minutes with each person, each group. Right. So the guides then have to go around and spend 2 minutes. And they generally, there's the standard, how long have you been here for? Yeah. Where are you going? And I said, the trick is when you find yourself talking about yourself too much, move on. Because it's really important to listen to exactly what you pointed out. Listen to your guests. What are they telling you? It's so satisfying when I'm on an expedition or whatever. If the knowledgeable person comes up and wants to listen to what I say, I feel very special. So it's an important part of guiding to take time to go around each of the little groups and say, hello, how are you? And why are you here? And how long are you here? And just listen for 2 or 3 minutes. And it's not rude to say, look, sorry, I've got to move on. Yeah. You can actually say, look, I try to get around everyone. So I'm just going to go around and talk to everyone. It's not rude to people at all. It's been respectful. So we found with comments, as you're a guide, you want to get comments, TripAdvisor, all of this. Oh, the guide was fantastic. That was amazing guide. The biggest thing, doesn't matter how much you know, if you listen to people at the end of the tour and to their stories, that gets really, really, really good feedback because it makes you part of a team. You've had the experience, you're going back and the people can go, oh, that was great. And I can remember we did this here and did that there. So spot on, Dylan. Yeah, really listening to guests. Amazing.
I couldn't agree with you more, Paul. That's great. Right, we've got some questions coming in. So this one from Tasha. Where is the best place to learn about identifying whales online? Any thoughts on that? I actually wondered about the best place to learn about them in the wild as well. Is quite an interesting question. But online, do you have any thoughts?
There's various different sources, but Dylan, you probably spend more because you work in the whole international space with whales. So where would you go, actually?
Well, I guess, you know, to be really honest, it's a very simple answer, but I think YouTube is probably the best place because, you know, the thing about whales and dolphins is you're seeing a small part of the animal at the surface at any one time. It's moving nearly all of the time. So books with still images can only kind of take you so far. If you want to learn about the animals and their behaviors and how to identify them, I think kind of trawling through YouTube video footage of different species, I mean, I still find that really, really helpful to this day. So that would be one recommendation. I don't know if you could add to that, but
yeah, there's various identification forms you can download from online. So you get identification forms, but Dylan's correct. You see a picture of a whale. It's got its name. So from there, you can probably make yourself a list, write down an identification form to go, okay, I want to know about this animal. And then, exactly as Dylan said, type on the name to YouTube, and you'll see different things where it's coming up and what it's doing. That's really good, yeah. Then you can target it down to different volumes, species by species, area by area. But don't try and learn too much. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Just take it slow. It takes a long time.
Absolutely, that's great. Right, we've got 7 minutes. I think we've got at least another 3 more questions, so I'll try and get through these. This one's coming from Ivan, our WCA colleague in Switzerland.
Oh, good, Ivan.
Always good to.
Always good. Ivan. How are you?
So, Ivan says, hello, Dylan and Paul. Thanks a lot for this presentation. Ivan here from the Swiss Cetacean Society. I had opportunities to spend time with different marine tourism operators. Some of them do a 30-minute presentation on the marine species that might be observed before the trip. Some of them after the end of the trip. Some of them do a little bit of both or during the trip only. Do you think there is a best moment to take a moment to educate the audience? When do you think the audience is the most responsive to receive these longer educational messages?
Longer messages.
And I guess by that, Ivan's kind of talking about the kind of conservation message, or the environmental take-home messages, really.
For the take-home messages, I think they're usually generally better at the end, when people are feeling they've made that connection. So we're there to make connection to marine mammals, and I have, here with the dolphins which trust us, we have even some of the trustees of the WCA have been here and said, dolphins roll over and they're just laying there looking in your eyes. It's so emotional. We have people crying, So a person goes out there, he's a normal old man, and he goes out there and he wanders down, the dolphin looks up and he starts crying. He's never felt emotions like that. So after the emotional content, that's really when that's the best time to deliver the messages, because people fall in love with the animals. Talking about things is great. We all love David Attenborough and all the rest of the stuff, but when you're there, you see the animals, you get that emotional content, your emotions come out, you're, oh, they're beautiful, you're amazing, and you feel it. After that is the best time. So look, now you love those animals, well, please don't do this, reduce your plastics, slow down, whatever the messages are locally. Yeah, definitely I'd say at the end for conservation messages. We do some presentations, Ivan, but generally won't do presentations over about 4 or 5 minutes, because the type of person turning up for the experience, probably it's a little bit boring for them. Whereas we try to stop with an animal, little talk, stop, talk, small little pieces to keep the energy high, and then input the messages at the end of each experience, small experience.
Sounds good. Thanks, Paul. Another question from Natalie Stanton this time. Thank you, Natalie. How do the online courses differ from the Responsible Whale Watching Guides course in person? What are the differences?
Good question, actually. Yeah, so in person is slightly different. As you can spend, we did, and we may do some more this year, but because of the flight issue, It's quite nice to spend a week, and drill down into it, and every day you turn up at 8 o'clock and you go away. But we are finding, I've done quite a few online ones now, is that the ability for someone to fit the course into their life is near the same as having someone turn up and dedicate themselves to doing a week course. Because on the week course, you're pressure cooking. So when I did my maritime qualification, some of those would last 6 solid weeks, and one took me 1,200 pages of notes, and you pressure cook yourself to regurgitate at the end. When you do an online course, you can think, okay, I've got 2 hours, I'm going to learn this little piece, stop. And what we're finding is a lot of the people, which is fantastic, this is what I was really looking for, how much people were going back and reviewing again. So we do a quiz process, and we've actually been asked by the students to do more quizzes. Funnily enough, we have a quiz after the end of every chapter, and they say, no, they're great, because then it makes them review. So you can't go, when you're in a pressure cooker week, it's very hard to go back and then you've got an exam at the end. It's like a pressure cooker process. If your way you learn is slower and you want to learn better, I actually think the online stuff, if you do it properly, you can learn the subject material better than you can from the pressure cooker process. But it depends on your different learning method. But we found overall, I think 90% of the people with the online process, stopping, starting, doing the quizzes, coming in and out when they want to in their own time frames, I think it works fantastic.
Sounds great. Sounds really good. All right. Well, we've got to squeeze in. We've got 2 minutes. We can squeeze in one more question. This is from Carol, and just paraphrasing, I think she's basically asking, in some places, because of the seasonal nature of whale watching, guides will tend to come in, need to be trained for that season, but then you lose them at the end of the season. You've got to start the process all over again at the beginning of the following season. Do you have any advice for that kind of, I guess that's kind of pressure cooker training, isn't it, in a way, that kind of intensive training that you need to give, and then you're going to have to go through the process again?
This is actually a really good question, because it's exactly one of the reasons why I did bring in this training system. So we had a lot of questions like this from guides as they felt a lot of pressure. They were thrown on the job. They were plucked off the street, thrown on a boat. This is normal, what I see around the world, and I don't like it. So with this course, you can pre-study, get your base in, then on the job, you can learn on the job. Then it gets to the end of the season, and it's your choice if you want to go to another location. If you have the ability, then you just continue education. Go, oh, great, that's fantastic. Thanks very much. You've made some money. Jump on a plane. Because with the northern and southern hemisphere, a lot of my girls were doing that for years. All guys, they were doing a season here, then they went up to Iceland. So our season finished, then Iceland started, and they went up to Iceland. They spent some time up there, and then they all got seasick and went, we want to come back. So they come back the next year. Doing seasonal work season to season is quite taxing, though. It is taxing. Often a tour guide puts in a lot of energy and effort. And honestly, to have a break, have a period of a couple of months just relaxing, it is quite important to not, and I've done it, I've worked 2 seasons for many years, and it burns you up. So just be careful, look at it very carefully, have a break. If you are going to work 2 seasons, have a month or 2 just to relax.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. That's great, Paul. Well, it brings us to the end of this webinar. Thank you so much for pulling these courses together. It's really, really exciting. It's great that we have them as part of our WCA family of training courses. Now, for anyone who wants to go and look at the course in more detail and take the course, they can go to the WCA website, look at the Get Involved and the courses section, but they could also come to the EKo Tours website as well, Paul, is that right?
No, to Marine Guide Training. So we've dedicated it to its own website. It's all completely independent. It runs through Teachable. So you can just go to www.marineguidetraining.com.
Perfect, that's great. So either through the WCA website or straight to marineguidetraining.com. Do take that course. We're getting lots of thank yous coming in from people who've enjoyed the last hour, Paul. I want to add my thank you, and especially for getting up so early in the morning and not even drinking coffee. I really appreciate it.
The sun.
The sun's coming up, wonderful.
Sun's coming up.
Good to see you, and thanks again.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, everyone. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.